right. My name is John Mark Hogue, and I'm going to call this meeting of the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Board to order. Today is Tuesday, October the 4th at 3 o'clock p.m. We do have a quorum present. And to start off, I just want to clarify, and we were talking before the meeting that our chair, Jim Cummings, had resigned from the board, and so you drew the short straw. You've got John Mark, the vice chair, to run the meeting for today. And I believe I was also told by John that for TIRZ Board, the city council appoints the chair of that board, and so we'll be having to wait to actually have an official chair until that is taken. The first item on the agenda is for public comment. I don't know, Stephen, I know you have something, but first, is there anyone in the audience that wants to comment on something that's not on the regular agenda? This is just the opportunity to speak to another issue that is not on the agenda. Hearing none. Stephen, you had some comments you wanted to make.
Yeah. John, I have a couple of questions. Last week, when the meeting was delayed because of the web page issue, did the staff check after it posted notices on the city hall and courthouse or wherever you post the public notices? Did you check the web page to see if it was working or if it was up?
Well, yes and no. I guess the problem that we didn't foresee is when you do that from a city computer, the problem was there was a box checked when it got uploaded that allows it to be visible on the city's internal network. And so if we check on a city computer, it pulls up like it's supposed to. The problem is we did not check from an outside computer to make sure that it was, we've actually never had that problem before. We've got it resolved, so it shouldn't happen again, but it was the way we checked those.
Because it is a state law, which I did not know when John pointed out, it has to be political. So don't you think it's important that the staff check both internally and external in the future and make sure that it is?
Absolutely. We've added that to our list to check to make sure.
John, in my opinion, and I'm just talking for myself, there are too many delays in the total application process that we go through, that this board sits through. And I don't know if that's a staff issue, a city management issue, or a city council issue, or all three. Maybe a little bit of all three. I don't find the staff proactive enough in dealing with an application process. And I really think it can be corrected and improved. I don't think the staff tries to find solutions when we have a problem. I think you just kind of let it float by. And that's my perception, right or wrong. It's still my perception. And I think that this board deserves better from the staff, the city of San Angelo, than what we were getting. And that's all I have to say.
All right. Since that's just on the public comment section, that's not anything that we can discuss or take any action on. If the board wants to at some point put an action item on the agenda to discuss those issues, they certainly can. So we'll move on to item number 3, which is the consideration of the approving of the minutes from the July 6, 2022 TIRZ Board meeting. You should have received those in the email with the notice of the meeting. If not, there are copies available. Has everyone had a chance to review those, and are there any changes or amendments to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Somebody make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Jason makes the motion, second by Stephen. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed, say no. And the motion carries. Item number 4, the financial report. Mr. James.
Do not have the clicker.
Set it right there.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go through this really quickly. I don't believe it's changed since your last meeting. And so the south, you can see all of the committed funds there. Beginning balance was $644,000. That was at the beginning of the 21-22 year. And our currently available for assignment is about $17,600, and that's in the south.
And that 17,000 includes all encumbrances today.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Now, actually, October 1st was the beginning of our budget year, so very soon we'll be getting a new number for the current year that we just started, the revenue expected for this year, but we have not received that yet. And I'll note that this financial report is as of August 31st. We do not have this end of September numbers yet either, although I don't believe any funds have been expended, so these numbers are likely the same for the September end of month report. In the north, we started out with about 2.4 million. After subtracting out all of the encumbered items, we're just right at 2 million available funding. And those numbers may come into play later. We'll be talking about some fairly large projects, or one fairly large project and one small one. But the one project is in the north, so you may want to keep that $2 million number in mind. That's really an overview of the financial report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions on the financial report, but I know we had the two public meetings earlier this year to try to encourage and educate the citizens more about the availability of funds in the north zone. Just as a matter of curiosity, have you seen any increase in applications in the north zone out of those?
To my knowledge, we've not received any applications yet. We have seen an increase, I believe, in the number of contacts. I've received a number of phone calls of people with questions about TIRZ. Where do I get the application? Asking specifics about how it works. So I'm hopeful that we'll see more applications in the near term. But and you may recall, and for those in the public that may be hearing this at some point, you all voted and the city council approved getting rid of the cycles for the north projects. So anybody with property in the north can apply at any time, and then those would be brought to the board for consideration as soon as possible after we receive that application. For the south, it still is on a cycle, but we are actually within the application period right now. I believe it opened October 1st, and we'll accept applications, I believe, through the end of November. And then we'll review all of those and bring them to you, most likely at your January meeting.
Are there any questions on the financial report? Do you need a vote to approve that? Or
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah. All right. Moving along to item number 5, consideration and possible action regarding an extension request for the TIRZ private incentive agreement by and between the City of San Angelo and Franco's Cafe, LLC.
This is, you've seen 2 or 3 of these recently with everything going on in the economy, supply chain issues. Folks are having trouble keeping to the time frame that the TIRZ agreements require them to meet, the 2 years. This particular project, their agreement will expire in February of 23. They don't believe they are going to make that, and so are asking for a 6-month extension to allow them to hopefully complete that project within that time frame. So basically the request before you is to grant them an extension for 6 months.
Any questions? Does anyone want to make a motion?
Well, I do have a question.
Okay.
So 6 months is, per se, the standard extension, you know?
That's what we've typically done. I think you all could extend more or less at your discretion, but 6 months is what they've asked for, and so.
Have enough time, Lee? 6 months enough time? Okay.
All right.
Move approval.
Stephen moves approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tony. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 6, consideration and possible action regarding an amendment to the private incentive amount for 416 South Oaks Concho Christmas Warehouse.
Okay, this was one of the projects that you all recommended funding for. The eligible project amount was around 67,000. There was a calculation issue by staff. There was a 2-page list of costs. The second page of that was mostly ineligible expenses, but mixed within that were 2 expenses that were actually eligible costs for the project. And so when staff totaled it up and brought it to you, we brought a total of 50,800. It should have been the 67,000. And so you all had authorized all of the projects across the board at 75% of their eligible expenses. And so we're just bringing this back to you to correct that and increase their funding by approximately $12,700. So actually in $12,704.50. And if you recall from the financial report in the South, we have about $17,600 available, so there's still enough available funds to cover that. And so staff is recommending approval of this to correct that, granting them the funds that should have been awarded in the first place had there not been that calculation error.
So the eligible amount is the 67 and the miscalculation was 50? That's just what I'm trying to understand.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Anyone have any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
By Tony. Second by Jason. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, consideration of recommending funding for a North Chapman Street project in the approximate amount of $3,132,900 funded out of TIRZ North funds over a period of multiple years to include sidewalks, decorative street and pedestrian lighting, signal upgrade, and engineering and design services.
You may recall, actually, let me go back a second. You may recall that the mayor had asked to hold some town hall meetings, both to help encourage applicants from the north in terms of applying for the incentive funds to use up some of that north money. Part of the purpose of that was also to look for other ideas. Are there projects that we could do with some of that money? And so this was one that came out of those discussions with that group. There is a street project already planned for North Chadbourn to basically reconstruct or resurface the street that's already moving forward. And so the idea here is to piggyback on that and to include sidewalks, decorative street lighting like we've got on parts of North Chadbourn, and then some landscaping, those sorts of things on that North Chadbourn Street project. It also would include a signal improvement at one of the traffic lights, and I'll talk more about that in just a second. It would also include the engineering and design for that piece of the project. There's a breakdown of the costs. I will note that the upgrading the traffic signal, this board in the past has typically not recommended funding street projects. We've done landscaping, sidewalks, street lighting, those sorts of things. I just say that to pose to you all the question, is upgrading the traffic signal, it's definitely an eligible expense that you all could fund, but based on this board's past practice, that might be a piece that I would suggest in the past the board perhaps wouldn't have funded because it's really truly a street, it's part of the street project. And then the others are things that this board, sidewalks and decorative street lighting, is something that this board has approved with multiple projects in the past. So with that, let me go to the funding proposal. As I mentioned earlier, there's about $2 million sitting in the north. This proposal...
Can I stop you there,
Yeah,
John?
sure.
Just a question before you get to the specifics of it. Is this a project that is actually, this is just a concept that the city staff is talking about, or this is a project that there's actually a plan in place to start working on as soon as they found the funding for it?
It is not. It is not, and as you noticed on the funding piece, there is the design element. So this is something that has not been in the works. It
Okay.
actually came up at the town hall meeting.
Okay.
And
And-
so,
Where does it, and you may not have the answer to this question, but where does it fit in with the infrastructure improvement plan for the city?
well, like I said, the North Chadburn Street project is already moving forward. I thought there would be somebody here to speak specifically to that, so I don't know the specifics on the timing, but it's already in the capital improvement plan and
Yeah, I'm
getting
just-
very close to moving forward. This piece of it for the sidewalks and street lighting is extra that wasn't planned.
That is not part of the capital improvement plan right now.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Is this gonna be designed in-house, or is it gonna be designed, you gonna hire engineers and architects?
It would typically be done, that's really a question for the public works folks, but most of our projects now are done by third parties. We do
But
very
you don't
little.
know how this one's gonna be done?
I would guess more than likely it will be contracted out. And that's, in fact, the reason for that dollar amount of 295,000. If we were doing it in-house, that
Oh,
wouldn't
yeah.
be,
That's 10% of the project.
that's pretty typical of engineering
Well, it's
projects
a lot
like
higher.
this. That probably includes some
Go ahead and finish
contingencies.
the proposal. Give us the rest of the proposal.
So the source of the funding, we would take half of that 2 million available, or $1 million. That would be the initial funding for the project. And then we would take 350,000 per year for 6 years, which is about roughly half of the projected revenue each of the future years. So the North brings in about 700,000 in rough numbers each year. So we would promise half of that each year for this particular project.
Can you give me the scope of the project from where to where?
It would be continuation of the sidewalk improvements to North 29th. I believe the current project ends at 19th. And so it would basically be 19th to 29th. There may be some improvements south of 19th as well, but most of it would be between 19th and 29th. Basically,
Similar design as you've done downtown?
well, I guess I would say it would be more similar to what you see on the north side. The downtown is a little more urban downtown feel versus, but what you see now from roughly the freeway up to 19th, it would be a continuation of that.
John, you mentioned that the mayor had a public hearing to discuss the application process. Are we seeing any more of those public hearings and having this project also be part of that discussion?
This project was brought up at one of those town hall meetings. I can't say that there was, it was sort of a new idea at the time, so in terms of the public input, there wasn't a lot
I don't
of
think.
reaction to it.
I don't think this project existed, or the thought of it existed until those meetings.
Did the staff bring it up, or did some individual bring it up at the public?
At the meeting that I was at, it came up, well, as if we don't have businesses coming forward, is there something else we can do with this money on the north side?
Yeah, one of the things that did come up at the meetings was looking at infrastructure projects. One that you all have already approved that is just, it hasn't gotten off of High Center at this point, but, and it's a very, very small project, but the COG put in a bus stop, and there's about a 4-block stretch where there's sidewalks north of it, sidewalks south of it, but there's 4 blocks, including right by that bus stop, that there's not a sidewalk. And so that's a project we're looking at, but that's a very small project compared to this. But other types of and that's on MLK, other projects like that we're looking at. This is a very large one compared to some of those little ones we're looking at.
In the signalization part of this project, isn't that in your capital improvements plan?
Again, I would have to defer to someone in public
What I
works.
would-
My guess is that that is within that project that's already moving forward.
I'm not, I don't mean to cut you off or anything, but I think I would probably like some more information before I would make a recommendation on it and kind of get some more details and see where it fits. And I would also personally like to go back and look at our newly revised rules and guidelines and kind of make sure where things are on it. I mean, on the one hand, I certainly understand the benefit of it. On the second hand, you know, the role of the TIRZ fund is not necessarily to just provide capital improvements for the city necessarily, but there's certainly a value to doing that for development of that area too. So I see both sides, but I think I'd like to get a little bit more detail.
If there are particular questions or details you'd like to have, and again, I can try to make sure at the next time we discuss it that there's someone from our engineering or public works staff here to
Well, I would
who
just
could answer those better.
I would just like to know, you know, the origin of the project. When did we start putting this together? You know, I would like to know the details, you know, how this came to be. You know, what I'm always guarding against is that there's a project out here that someone wants to have done. There's just not any funding for it, because you see that all the time in our capital improvement plan. Well, we'd love to do this, but there's no money for it. And you say, well, here's an opportunity, we'll just go take some money from this and use it for that. And so I want to make sure that what we're doing, if we do something like this, is something that really is for the benefit of the North Zone.
Right.
And will also help encourage investment, private investment in the area, as
Excuse me.
opposed to just fixing a street.
I'd like to see a schematic of what they're proposing. A rough, it doesn't have to be exact, but something that some blue sky dreamer is talking about.
Let me say something before these two talk again. I just want to find clarity in it. There's already a project going on those streets, correct? Even if we deny this one, they're already going to fix, there's a street project? Is that what you said?
Curb to curb for the street.
Curb to
So
curb,
right now,
okay.
there's nothing planned for outside the curb, sidewalk, streetlights,
So
any of that.
they're still going to do that curb project.
Yes.
And then if we agree to this, we're going to give them $350,000 for the next 6 years. And I guess it's going to look very immaculate, I'm assuming, because that's a lot of money.
Yep. Go ahead.
No, I agree with Mr. Hoga. If it's just something that they need money from the north, I agree we need to spend it, because that's not the government's job, is to sit on money. It's there to help the
Yeah.
community and the people. So,
I just want to know
yeah.
have more information, and let's take our time to look at it. I mean, I don't sense there's any great deadline that we're under
No.
to do this.
I'm with John Mark. I want to see how it's going to, what is proposed or even considered, and see how it might enhance someone to improve their businesses, and further improve the tax base. If we don't do that, we're just spinning our wheels.
Sidewalks and pedestrian access, I'm a huge advocate for, so I could see that as being an important part of it. Like you said, some of these other aspects of it, I would just like to see more details to know, you know. I'm not saying no on, you know, the traffic lights and things of that nature. All those could be important aspects of it. I just want to make sure that we spend it for the development of that area and make sure it's done wisely.
Okay.
In other words, what I don't like is, and I'm not blaming you on it, John. It's just
Sure.
Sometimes you get projects like this. Somebody has an idea of a project. Oh, let's get them to say, yeah, this project is great, but this is the first I've seen it, so I'm not ready to say, yeah, I'm going to vote to recommend something that I don't know the details over.
Sure, absolutely, especially when it's $3 million.
Yeah, especially
lot
when it's
of money,
$3
yeah.
million.
Well, I don't like.
1 million right off
I
the
don't
bat,
like
and then,
traffic signals at all.
yeah, that's,
Well,
And I think the city staff engineering could conceivably design this project. Save
Well, and I don't-
another $350,000.
I don't think our job is to get into micromanagement of how the staff does it, but I think we are entitled to know what it's for, how it fits in with the role of the tiers and what the specifics are. So if we could come back and if we could have somebody present something, the schematics or a vision or an idea, and we talk about what it is and what the benefit would be to doing it for private investors and people, encouraging people to come in and invest in private properties.
Sure, we can definitely bring more information back.
Sure.
Also, John, if we can find out if there's any plans for any further public town hall meetings, maybe partnering up with some North End associations and groups like the Minister Alliance, or someone that can help us with the outreach to get these
Yeah, I
businesses.
think you're talking about a separate issue, but yeah.
But not specific.
Bring this project,
Yeah.
present it at the same time.
I think what Tony's
Educate the
talking
public.
about is continuing the outreach like we did with the other
Mhm.
meetings that the mayor held,
Yeah,
and continue that process too, and this could be part of that.
But if we're gonna present a project, the public needs to know
Yeah.
that's being proposed.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Get input. Tony, do you have any questions about any of this?
No, I agree. There needs to be more information. I think a presentation would go a long ways, and I also think that a few more voices from the north should
Yeah.
be included, especially because it is a lot of money.
Yeah, and that would probably be part of something we would want to have is if we get far enough down the road, since this idea came out of one of those meetings, we might want to get some public input on that too. Jason, anything else on this?
I'm good.
So can we just, I don't think we have to table it or make a motion, just go, but you kind of got your instructions on what we'd
yeah,
like to
that's
see.
fine, just direction is fine.
All right, if there's nothing else on that, we'll move on to item.
Can I make a comment
Sure.
on this issue? You're asking a lot of good questions, and a lot of this happened before John got here. I don't remember what the guy's name was that went to Colorado, but we've done part of the streetscaping about 20 years ago. And Henry Schmidt did the design. It's at 14th Street, going north and south, so that'd be a very good canvas for you to look at whether at that time, there were some other things done at that time that city government was not as pleased with the quality of what Henry did. But we did sidewalks, we did street lights, we did landscaping, and we did planted trees. That's one issue that I think would be very good. You can get $3 million to go all the way from 3rd Street to 29th. It's not very much money. Let me opine on that. The money that we used at the time to do that particular streetscaping was a 90-10 match with TxDOT. And I think we did other 90-10 matches with TxDOT. And we did that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Why we haven't done more of them in the meantime, if do nothing else than just do the sidewalks. And so if somebody's got better architectural design features in their brain would come up and do the lights, maybe so. But if we could do that, a 90-10 split, well, then we can get all our money. We can get 90% of that $3 million instead of just saying, oh, that's a full bucket. Let's just take 100% of it out of ours. Don't go to trouble to try to get some match funding from the state or from Biden's structure deals. To do those deals, you need to get shovel-ready projects. We might have shovel-ready projects, I don't know. But that was the main thing we did. Instead of taking it all out of TIRZ, we did 90-10 splits. Opine on one other issue of this, and that's when we started TIRZ. It was right after there was a crash in the market. And a lot of TIRZ prior to that time, and John was in Abilene, it happened in Abilene, and that's what we were looking at more than anything else. They had borrowed money on a future projection plan, and the market went zip. So 50% of their income was 100% of their money. And at that time, we said, we're not going to go out and borrow money today and to spend it for for the future, because we don't know what our revenue's gonna be if everything just goes south.
That's right.
That was our philosophy at the time. Of course, we came in and did the $9 million downtown project. And to opine on the other issue, that's why the South doesn't have any money.
That's right.
Because they're taking, north revenue and south revenue is about the same. The city council was given the opportunity to fund the $9 million at 25% of the revenues of the South. When it got to the city council, they said, oh, no, let's just do 50%. So that's why there's no money in the South. Look at your revenue base, it's 700,000 in the north, what is it, John, 600 and something thousand in the South.
Well, that was
But you have-
actually the beginning
well-
balance. The
What's your
revenue is 430,000.
Well,
430.
we're kind of getting a little off the topic, but,
So anyway, those are, I apologize,
yeah, it's all right.
Mr. Chairman. But that's the background of where we are, and we've done part of it up there, which would be a good canvas for you to look at. And I would just opine that we need to do some 90-10 funding instead of 100% out of our pocket.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fluke. Any other public comment on this issue? All right, item number 8, which is consideration of authorizing additional maintenance funds for potential TIRZ maintenance contract to include maintenance of landscaping, weeds, trash pickup, and similar tasks to ensure aesthetic streetscapes along streets within the north and or south TIRZ area.
This is an item, I think at your last meeting, or maybe 2 meetings ago, this proposal to fund maintenance along Chadburn, basically weeding the landscaping areas, trimming the trees periodically, picking up trash, those sorts of things. There would be an upfront equipment cost of $38,000, and then annual operating cost of about $62,000.
What is the equipment?
I believe
I
it
think it's for like
includes a vehicle,
lawnmowers and trucks.
There's a vehicle and tools.
vehicle and then tools.
You have a vehicle now?
No, I think part of this would be outfitting a new, one person that would be responsible for this. So it would be a vehicle and tools and equipment for that person that would come down this area.
I don't know the names anymore, but environmental control does all kinds of mowing and weed all over town, including on my street, behind my house, on the right of way. Why can't they do this?
I have to do my own.
Well, that was the question that the board brought up at the last meeting. I think the answer is they do the minimal amount that they already do. And so the idea was, let's use TIRZ money to do better. Clean out the flower beds more frequently, pick up trash more frequently.
Parks Department can't do that?
They don't have the staffing now to do beyond what they're doing
So
now.
we're gonna rob TIRZ fund money to do it.
Well, it's a proposal. You all don't have
Is
to,
this-
you don't have to approve it, but that's the idea. Other cities often do that in a
You're gonna take TIRZ
downtown.
money and supplement the city's general fund.
Let me
That's
add-
what you're gonna do.
Is this the area, this is the area on North Chadburn that we're talking about? To use
Well,
it
it's up to
for
you, and that's
where?
why the north and south is there. Most of the work would be in the Chadburn corridor, although it wouldn't necessarily be limited to that. About 37% of Chadburn corridor is in the south and 63% in the north. So the proposal is to take 63% of the funding from the north and 37% from the south. Now, you all last time had a little bit of heartburn of taking any from the south. So one option would be to just do this in the north and just take north money.
Well, since we don't have employees, I mean, who's gonna do this?
It would be through the Parks Department, but their proposal includes, like I said, hiring another staff person and outfitting them to do this
So
activity.
TIRZ funds would go to the Parks Department to pay for staff and equipment to do this? Is that how
Correct.
that would work?
Would it be a dedicated position? Because if it's
It wouldn't
Coming
be
up.
Minimal.
specifically dedicated. It would, I think the way they've talked about it is adding a
I can
person,
see that going.
but
south.
having a crew. And so they would have a 3 or 4 person crew come and just do it, and they could do it more quickly. But it would be roughly the equivalent of a full-time person. But instead of being out there doing it every day, they might have a crew come once a week to just go through there and do it.
So I like this idea. One, the restaurant, I mean, even some of the downtown areas over there, and I will say there is the homeless people, especially under that bridge, but I remember, I guess last meeting, they said that belonged to TxDOT. So the parks is San Angelo, and the TxDOT is the state of Texas. Is there any way to make sure that that bridge is cleaned underneath that bridge? And you know how y'all sometimes fine people for their houses for mowing their yards, and maybe just send a bill to TxDOT, say, hey, we cleaned this for you guys.
I am almost positive we can't do that, but.
I know, that was very sarcastic.
That's a question. We do have some agreements with TxDOT that allow us to do some things within their right-of-way, but that's something I don't know the answer to, whether or not we could do that. I suspect if we said, we want to have people come and pick up trash under your bridge, I suspect they would say, great.
Which bridge are you talking about?
67
The overpass, right there by Transit.
Oh, okay.
So where Chadwin goes under.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's I mean, I see the police department, and I see a lady from the police department, I don't know her name, but I always want to like pat her on the back and like say, hey, go eat at the restaurant, because she's over there, takes her own bags, and she's cleaning up after those homeless
Are we
people.
allowed to use TIRZ funds for maintenance like this?
Yes, what I started to say earlier, this is not uncommon, particularly in downtown districts, to have tiers, or in some cases, it's a business improvement district, completely separate from tiers, but to do that sort of enhanced maintenance, landscape maintenance, all of that in an area above and beyond what the city would normally do. In fact, you already budget, and I forget the amount, it's small, $5,000 or $6,000 a year, to do things like trim some of the shrubs, trim some trees. We replace, if there's some of those trees are watered with underground water, they replace the parts that need replacing. So we already fund a little bit of that, but this will be a more comprehensive project
And
to
this
do the
is just
same.
in the public areas, or does it include private property?
No, it would just be within the public right of way.
Who's doing it now, John?
Nobody really. Like I said, some of that landscaping maintenance,
Yeah.
we budget a little bit to do currently, but it's very minimal, once or twice a year kind of thing, versus this, that some of the things would be done weekly, some things monthly.
Why you need a vehicle then?
Just part of that sort of package to have an additional crew that would handle this. Again, the folks from our Parks Department were here to answer some of these detailed questions at the last meeting.
And they left.
For some reason, they
I'm gonna vote against it.
aren't here
The whole
today.
thing. I think it's
Let's hear from everybody. Jason, you want?
Well, again, I mean, I don't want the money in the north going to something that, just because we need to spend it because it's there. But, like I said, it's not the government's job to sit on that money. For what? I mean, the north has so much money, and I mean, we're being so strict with them. I mean, I say if they need to fix their driveway, fix it. If I say if they need to fix their sign, fix it. This right here, I mean, it's dirty up north. There's trash everywhere. I think this, but I just don't like that word minimal. Like, if we give them an extra crew, I don't want them to, let's do the bare minimal today.
And I don't think that's the intent.
Okay.
I think, and that's part of what came out. We had some staff that drove around in the north, just looking, hey, are there things we can just see driving around? And that was one of them, largely about trash pickup. If we had somebody coming through weekly picking up trash, that could make a big difference, especially in the north.
What's wrong with the business owners out front picking up their own damn trash?
Oh, I do that every day, but,
I know.
like the
I do it
streets.
behind my house too, when they throw things
Tony or
out on the
Tony,
street.
y'all have any, you want to get in on this?
My concern is that this is an annual recurring expense. what happens if we don't have the funding? What are they gonna do? They're gonna fire the one that they added and, you know,
I suspect that they would maybe find a way to come up with the money or repurpose them to something else. Again, this is not a huge expense in the scheme of
How much,
tiers.
how much are we talking about?
Yeah, I actually didn't get to that, but, well, yeah, the upfront cost would be 38,000. That's how we would split it north and south, and the same with the annual costs. So, you know, on a recurring basis, it would just be about 62,000. Now, that could increase a little bit over the years
I'm sure
from
it will
inflation, but,
increase.
given that the north brings in about 700,000 a year, that's not a huge expense.
Do we,
John, every year, the city trades pickups. They buy water department pickups, street department pickups, they buy environmental control, weed control. What's wrong with instead of spending $30,000 for a new truck, we pass one and buy a used one from one of the departments that's gonna hand one down?
Well, I guess most of that expense is for the pickup. That's definitely an option. I know in my department, we just got a vehicle and it's an older vehicle hand-me-down from another department.
Nothing wrong with that.
I agree with you on
Tony,
that, yeah.
did you want to
Well,
have any questions or
I
comments?
still think, having a little help, I think it's a good project. But if it's not dedicated, and we're putting money into something that we can't see work, and why would I want it recurring if it didn't work? So if I paid a guy, okay, look, I'm gonna give you $100,000 to take care of my lawn for, the next 4 years. And 6 months in, I never see anything. So what have I done with the money?
Well, that was one of my questions was,
How are we gonna keep track?
how do we know that
Checks
the
and
extra
balances.
attention is going to actually be given to that area? If it's just being done through whatever the Parks Department typically does, and it's just funding. The other question I would have, is there a reason, other than the obvious history of the tiers, that we would have to split it up between north and south? And then do you get into the whole deal of, well, how much do you have to spend in the north and how much you have to spend in the south?
I think the concern would be,
Who gets the who gets the
given
trash
the-
picked up and who doesn't?
given the discussions we've had on north versus south, we wouldn't want to use all north money and then have those guys be picking up trash in the
Yeah.
south and
Yeah,
vice
sure.
versa. So if we took a little bit from each, then there's
Yep.
justification.
That makes sense.
In terms of how do we know it's getting done, I think it would be up to us as staff and you all, and even the business owners. If you drive down the streets and there's still trash and trees need trimming and you don't see a difference, then this board could say next year, hey, we don't want to fund that again because we don't think we got our money's worth.
Yeah, but the new guys driving around in a brand new truck, it probably won't be the one that they're cleaning the street with. It's gonna go somewhere else. So I just think there needs to be a few more checks and balances to this proposal.
Yeah,
I'm not against it. I'm
John,
just
I'm
not.
gonna make a motion, Mr. John.
go ahead.
I'm gonna make a motion that this be referred back to city management to come up with a plan with existing city resources to take care of the maintenance in the north and south zone. And if they need a vehicle, that they provide a used vehicle to somebody that they can bring that back. But just, the city management need to come back and kind of massage this a little bit and come up with an existing plan, how it can be done with existing city resources without spending north and south money. Someday, guys, somebody's gonna come along in the north and have a couple of $1 million project, and we're gonna fritter it away on these kind of steals, and we're not gonna have the money to match it. But someday, you watch it, whether it be 5 years, 2 years, 10 years from now, somebody in the north's gonna come along, and we're gonna need that money for something. I bet you. My motion is this, that it be referred back to city management for further review. If I don't get a second, it just dies.
So for now, that would effectively be a denial of this project to send it back and,
Do
or
what?
just a tabling. Is this a
My
tabling to bring
motion
back or
is
just?
this be referred back to city management for further study, using existing city resources.
So I take that to mean you would not be in favor of getting TIRZ resources for it?
Be not in favor of what?
Of using TIRZ
for it.
money for it.
That's right.
Okay,
The question, I think, is, I have concerns, as Ms. Hunter does, about, checks and balances and how you know you're getting your money's worth and things like that.
That's my
So I would
concern as
want,
well.
I would want questions like that answered before we were to approve it.
okay.
And I want to get
What I
this
hear
straight.
from
yeah.
Stephen is he doesn't think we should spend the money on something like this. My approach is I'm open to it, but I'm gonna have to have more information and make sure what we're talking about before we move forward. But Stephen made a motion. Is there any second for his motion?
Well, before we second, let me get this straight. They're not gonna clean the businesses, places. I think they're gonna clean like the streets and the
That's right.
bridges.
Public rights.
Yeah, not the businesses. So when you
Yep.
said earlier, like, what's wrong with the business? I mean,
No, but-
you can't answer for them, but
But
like,
if a business sees something out in front of you, if you see something out in front of you.
I'm gonna do that, but I
Yeah,
can't
you-
answer for the guy in that.
No, I
Why
agree.
doesn't he do
I agree.
it? I mean, so it's
That's
just,
a $1 million question.
yeah.
Well, there's a lot, the way the dynamics of it works.
Mm-hmm.
Having a business downtown, I can tell you that a lot of the trash it's the way the wind blows through the corridors at any given day. I can open the door and there's a ton of trash
Yeah.
all up into, on the sidewalk and everything. I mean, yeah, we do it.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be nice to have,
Well,
it would be nice to have a little more help to keep it clean, and I agree with the project, but if we did this, it would need to be something that was,
Stephen made a motion, which is to send it back and basically say, let the city do it out of their own resources.
I said, let the city manager bring back a plan for using existing city resources for maintenance of the downtown area.
And that's the motion that's on the table. Is there a second to that motion? Hearing none, the motion dies. We'll ask if a second. Does anybody else want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we table until we get more information, and hopefully that there's not gonna be any upfront capital cost if we do
Okay.
participate
Your
in.
motion is essentially send it back to, table it, send it back to staff and tell them to come up with more details.
Make sure the parks people are here.
yep, I agree. I think there should
We
be
need
some
the parks people
presentation.
here.
Okay, so there's a motion to table this item and have it brought back. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Tony. Any other discussion on that? Any questions? Any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? And the motion carries. Director's report, item 9.
The only thing two things, you'd mentioned Jim, the former chair now has resigned, or his appointment term was up, and so a new replacement has been appointed for him, but as John Mark mentioned, the statute, Texas state statutes require TIRZ Board's chair to be appointed directly by the city council rather than being elected. So we'll be taking an item to council to appoint a chair from among the members. If there's anybody beating down the door to have that position, let somebody on council know or let me know. The other thing, Nolan, who is or was an employee in economic development, the last meeting here was his last meeting. And so he's no longer with the Economic Development Department, and so hopefully we'll be looking to fill that position. But this, as you may or may not know, the TIRZ program is sort of split between the Planning and Development Services Department, where me and my staff kind of oversee the board and the workings of the board, and then the staff in economic development oversee the incentive program. So they're the ones that take in the applications, process them, and then bring those to you with a recommendation from staff from both groups. So anyway, long story short, that position is currently vacant. So hopefully that doesn't too negatively impact our current application
Was that
cycle.
expected?
I don't have details on
Okay,
how that happened, so.
okay, all right, thank you.
That's all I had.
Next item on the agenda is any other announcements, or if anyone wants to ask for any future agenda items. One future agenda item I think that I heard out of today was Tony brought up continuing to partner or work with other groups to continue to get the word and education out about the North TIRZ zone. So I think we need to be proactive with that, and I think putting that on the agenda to discuss. And I know, Tony, I know you have some ideas about that you would like to discuss, so.
John, I'm like a dog chewing on the bone. You got any news on 4th Street?
I don't. I have heard that
You want it on the
there.
agenda? You want it on the agenda?
I just want the staff to tell me what they've done or not done.
I can,
about 4th Street.
I can put an update on the next agenda. I've heard that
Okay.
there has been progress on the ownership issue, but I haven't gotten anything official from TxDOT or our real estate department. But I can put an item on the next agenda.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone?
So you'll put it on the agenda.
Yes.
Get a report. Anything else anybody wants to report on? All right, then motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
I second.
All those in favor, say
Third,
aye.
fourth.
Get out of here. All right.